The throne room of Valdris Castle had never known such silence. Seraphine stood at the entrance, her fingers trembling against the rough fabric of her worn traveling dress. 3 years. 3 years since she had last set foot in this hall, and everything had changed. Everything except the way her heart seized when she saw him. Kaelin Voss, Alpha King of the Northern Realm, sat upon his obsidian throne like a god carved from winter itself. His silver eyes swept across the assembled nobles, cold and merciless, until they found her. The recognition hit them both at the same moment. Seraphine watched his jaw tighten, watched his knuckles go white against the armrests. Around them, 500 nobles held their breath, sensing the shift in their king's demeanor but not understanding its source. "Bring her forward," Kaelin commanded, his voice cutting through the hall like a blade through silk. 2 guards flanked Seraphine, escorting her down the endless crimson carpet. With each step, memories assaulted her, his hands in her hair, his teeth at her throat, his voice calling her his fated mate, and then his voice, cold as death, rejecting her before the entire pack. "You dare return." Kaelin rose from his throne, descending the steps with predatory grace. "After what you did." Seraphine lifted her chin, forcing steel into her spine. "I was summoned, Your Majesty, by your own decree." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The king had summoned her? Why would he call back the Omega he had publicly humiliated and cast aside? Kaelin stopped mere inches from her, close enough that she could smell the pine and wood smoke scent that had once meant safety. His silver eyes bore into hers, searching, accusing. 3 years ago, you vanished in the night like a thief, he said, loud enough for the court to hear. You took something that belonged to me. I took nothing, Seraphine replied, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. You made it abundantly clear that I was nothing to you, that our bond was a mistake to be erased. Pain flickered across Kaelin's features. There and gone so quickly she might have imagined it, but his next words drove all other thoughts from her mind. Then explain, he growled. Why my scouts report that an Omega matching your description has been raising a child in the eastern villages, a child with silver eyes and the unmistakable scent of royal blood. The throne room erupted. Seraphine's blood turned to ice. No, they could not have found out. She had been so careful, had hidden so completely. Give me my heir, Kaelin commanded, his voice rising above the chaos. Give me my heir, and perhaps I will show mercy. The court fell silent, every eye fixed upon them. Seraphine met the Alpha King's gaze without flinching, even as her world crumbled around her. Your heir? She let out a laugh that held no humor. You rejected me, Kaelin. You stood before this very court and declared that you would rather die without issue than claim a worthless Omega as your queen. His flinch was visible this time. Good. Let him remember his cruelty. And now you demand the child you never wanted? Seraphine continued, her voice rising. The child I carried alone, birthed alone, raised alone, while you warmed your bed with that viper you chose over your fated mate. Gasps echoed through the hall. No one spoke to the Alpha King this way. But Seraphine was beyond caring. 3 years of hiding, of struggling, of watching her son ask why he had no father, had burned away her fear. You will tell me where my son is, Kaelin said, stepping closer still, his wolf rising in his eyes. Or I will tear apart every village in the Eastern Territories until I find him myself. Touch my son, Seraphine whispered, and I will show you exactly what a worthless Omega is capable of. For a long moment, they stood there, Alpha and Omega, locked in a battle of wills that made the air crackle with tension. Then Kaelin did something that shocked everyone in the throne room, including Seraphine herself. He dropped to his knees before her. 3 years earlier, the spring festival had transformed the village of Thornwick into a riot of color and sound. Ribbons fluttered from every rooftop, music spilled from the taverns, and the scent of roasted meat and honeyed wine filled the air. Seraphine moved through the crowded streets like a ghost, her simple gray dress marking her as an unmated Omega of no importance. The villagers parted around her without acknowledgement. She was used to it. 23 years of being overlooked had taught her to find comfort in obscurity, but tonight felt different. There was electricity in the air that made her wolf pace restlessly. Something was coming. Sira! A hand caught her elbow, spinning her around. There you are. I have been searching everywhere. Mira, her only friend in the world, stood breathless and bright-eyed with excitement. The beta woman was practically vibrating with news she was clearly desperate to share. What is it? Seraphine asked, allowing herself to be pulled toward the edge of the crowd. The Alpha King, Mira whispered urgently. He is here, in Thornwick, right now. Seraphine's heart stuttered. That is impossible. Why would King Kaelin come to a border village during a common festival? Who knows why royalty does anything? Mira was already tugging her toward the village square, but everyone is gathering to see him. Come on. When will we ever have another chance to glimpse the most powerful wolf in the realm? Every instinct screamed at Seraphine to flee. But Mira's grip was insistent, and perhaps some part of her was curious. The Alpha King was said to be magnificent, terrible, and beautiful, like a winter storm given flesh. They reached the square just as the royal procession arrived. Seraphine's first thought was that the stories had not done him justice. Kaelin Voss sat astride a black warhorse, his silver armor gleaming in the torchlight. He was tall, even-seated, with shoulders broad enough to block out the stars and hair as dark as a moonless night. But it was his eyes that stole her breath, pale as winter moons, ancient as glaciers, sweeping across the crowd with the detached interest of a predator surveying prey. Then those eyes found hers. The world stopped. Seraphine felt it like a hook sinking into her chest. Her wolf surged forward with recognition so absolute it defied reason. Mate, 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 the word echoed through every fiber of her being. This man, this king, was her fated mate. Kaelin's expression shifted. Shock first, then confusion, then something darker that made Seraphine's knees weaken. He dismounted in one fluid motion, ignoring the startled exclamations of his guards, and began walking directly toward her. The crowd parted like water before a blade. Seraphine wanted to run, wanted to hide, wanted to pretend this was not happening because it could not be happening, not to her, not with him, but her feet remained rooted to the cobblestones as the Alpha King stopped before her. What is your name? His voice was rough velvet, scraping against her senses. Seraphine, she managed. Seraphine Ashwood. His nostrils flared, drinking in her scent. Something primal flickered in those silver depths. Do you feel it? He asked, so quietly that only she could hear. This pull between us? She should have lied. Should have denied it and walked away and saved herself from everything that was to come. Instead, she whispered, yes. Kaelin's hand rose to cup her cheek, his touch searing against her skin. Then the gods have a cruel sense of humor, he murmured. To give me my fated mate now, when I am already promised to another. The words struck her like a slap. Before she could respond, before she could even process what he had said, a commotion erupted at the edge of the square. A woman's voice, sharp and imperious, cut through the night. Kaelin, what is the meaning of this? Seraphine turned to see a vision of aristocratic beauty pushing through the crowd. Golden hair, emerald eyes, a gown that cost more than most villagers earned in a lifetime, and on her throat, gleaming in the torchlight, a betrothal pendant bearing the royal crest. Lady Isolde Ravencroft, the Alpha King's intended bride. Kaelin's hand fell from Seraphine's cheek as if burned. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by cold duty. It is nothing, he said, stepping back from Seraphine. A momentary distraction. Nothing more. The dismissal cut deeper than any blade. Seraphine stood frozen as Isolde reached them, as the beautiful noble looked her up and down with undisguised contempt. This? Isolde laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. This is what distracted you? A common omega in peasant rags? I said it was nothing. Kaelin's voice had turned to ice. He did not look at Seraphine again. We should return to the castle. Of course, my king. Isolde took his arm possessively, shooting Seraphine one last victorious smirk before leading Kaelin away. The crowd dispersed slowly, buzzing with gossip about what they had witnessed, but Seraphine remained standing in the empty square long after everyone had gone, her hand pressed to the cheek he had touched. She told herself the wetness on her face was from the evening mist. She told herself she would never see him again. She was wrong on both counts. The summons arrived 3 days later. Seraphine stared at the royal seal on the parchment, her hands trembling so violently that the paper rattled like autumn leaves. The Alpha King commanded her presence at Valdres Castle. Immediately. No explanation given. You cannot go, Mira insisted, pacing the small confines of Seraphine's cottage. It is obviously a trap. That Ravencroft woman probably convinced him to have you executed for daring to catch his eye. A royal summons cannot be refused. Seraphine set down the letter with forced calm. Refusal would bring soldiers to drag me there anyway, and my entire village would suffer for harboring a traitor to the crown. Then I am coming with you. No, Seraphine caught her friend's hands. If something happens to me, someone needs to tell my mother's sister in East Hollow. Promise me, Mira. Mira's eyes glistened, but she nodded. I promise. But nothing is going to happen. You are going to walk into that castle, do whatever they want, and walk right back out. Yes? Yes, Seraphine lied. The journey to Valdres Castle took 2 days by foot, Seraphine needed the time to prepare herself, to build walls around her heart high enough that seeing him again would not destroy her. When the castle finally rose before her, those walls crumbled to dust. Valdris was a fortress of black stone and sharp edges, beautiful the way a drawn sword was beautiful. As Seraphine approached the gates, she felt the weight of 1,000 eyes. They were expecting her. A servant led her through endless corridors of polished obsidian. With each step, the bond in her chest pulled tighter, guiding her toward him. He was close. The servant stopped before a carved door. "The king awaits you in his private study." A meaningful pause. Alone. Seraphine's heart hammered as the door swung open. Kaelin stood at the window, his back to her, silhouetted against the gray light of the overcast sky. He did not turn as she entered, but she saw the tension in his shoulders, heard the slight hitch in his breathing. He felt it too, this impossible pull between them. "You came." His voice was carefully neutral. "I had little choice, Your Majesty." "Do not call me that." Now he turned, and the raw hunger in his eyes made her stumble backward. "Not when we are alone. Not when every fiber of my being screams that you belong to me. I belong to no one." The words came out stronger than she felt. "You made that clear at the festival. I am nothing to you." A momentary distraction. Pain crossed his features. "I was cruel. I know that. But you must understand my position." He began to pace like a caged wolf. "Isolde and I have been betrothed since childhood. Our union will unite the northern and southern territories, ending generations of conflict. Thousands of lives depend on this marriage. Then why am I here?" Kaelin stopped pacing, turned to face her fully, and what she saw in his expression terrified her more than any threat ever could. "Because I cannot stop thinking about you." The admission seemed to cost him. "Because I close my eyes and see your face. Because the bond is driving me to madness, and I needed to know if you felt the same." Seraphine's resolve wavered. "What does it matter what I feel? You have made your choice." "Have I?" He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, catching her face in his hands. "The ceremony is not for another month. 30 days to decide between duty and fate, between a political alliance and the mate the gods chose for me." She should have pushed him away, should have remembered his cruelty, the way he had made her feel worthless. But his touch ignited something primal. Her wolf keened with longing, straining toward its other half. "1 month," Kaelin whispered against her lips. "Give me 1 month to know you, to be certain, and then I will make my choice." "And if you choose her?" His jaw tightened. "Then you will be free to leave, with gold enough to start a new life anywhere you wish. You have my word." It was madness. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this would end in heartbreak. But when had the bond ever listened to logic? 1 month, she breathed. Kaelin's answering smile was devastating. And when he kissed her, Seraphine let herself believe, just for a moment, that fate might actually be kind. She should have known better. The weeks that followed existed outside of time. Kaelin kept her hidden in the East Tower, in chambers more luxurious than anything Seraphine had ever imagined. Silk sheets, a copper bathing tub filled with rose-scented water, a balcony overlooking the northern sea, a gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. He came to her every night after the castle slept. Those stolen hours became the center of her universe. They would talk for hours. He told her of the burden of the crown, the loneliness of power. She told him of her simple life in Thornwick, of the mother who had died young, of the dreams she had abandoned. And when words failed, there were other ways to communicate. Kaelin touched her like she was sacred. His hands mapped every curve of her body with reverent attention, learning what made her gasp and shiver. But he never took it further than that. Never claimed her fully. "Not yet," he would whisper against her throat, his control clearly hanging by threads. "Not until I am free to make you mine in truth." Hope began to blossom in Seraphine's chest, fragile and dangerous. Perhaps he would choose her. Perhaps fate would triumph over duty. On the 15th night, everything changed. Seraphine woke to the sound of her door crashing open. Before she could scream, guards surrounded her bed, their faces hard as stone. "By order of Lady Isolde Ravencroft," one announced, "you are to come with us." "Isolde has no authority over me," Seraphine protested, clutching the sheets to her chest. "The king himself placed me in these chambers." The guard's smile was cruel. "The king is currently entertaining foreign dignitaries and cannot be disturbed. Lady Isolde assures us she acts with his full blessing." They dragged her through the castle in nothing but her nightgown, past servants who quickly averted their eyes. The great hall was packed with nobles. At the head of the room stood Lady Isolde with a smile like poisoned honey, and beside her, looking confused and alarmed, stood Kaelin. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. Isolde caught his arm. Patience, my love. I have prepared special entertainment, she addressed the crowd. Lords and ladies, I present the king's secret shame, an omega hidden in the East Tower while his betrothed waited faithfully. Gasps rippled through the assembly. This is not what it seems, Kaelin tried to say, but Isolde cut him off. Is it not? She produced a handful of letters, waving them for all to see. I have here correspondence between the king and this creature. Love letters, my lords. Promises of devotion. Plans to break our betrothal and install this peasant as queen. The crowd erupted. Seraphine searched desperately for Kaelin's eyes, needing him to deny it, to defend her, to do something. But he stood frozen, his face a mask of horror as his carefully constructed world collapsed around him. The Southern Alliance will not stand for this insult, a noble shouted. If the betrothal is broken, there will be war. My father's armies are already mobilized, another added. We came here in good faith. This treachery will not go unanswered. The threats came from every direction. War, bloodshed, thousands dead because of her. And still Kaelin did not speak. Kaelin, Seraphine whispered, her voice breaking. Please. Finally, his eyes met hers, and in them, she saw the moment he made his choice. Duty over fate, kingdom over heart. I, Kaelin Voss, Alpha King of the Northern Realm, formally reject the bond between myself and the Omega Seraphine Ashwood. His voice rang out clear and cold across the silent hall. She is nothing to me. A temporary madness, now cured. Lady Isolde is my chosen mate, as she has always been. The words carved through her like knives, each one driving the air from her lungs. She felt the bond between them scream in agony, felt something fundamental inside her begin to crack. Furthermore, Kaelin continued, his face carved from stone. This Omega is banished from the Northern Realm. Should she ever return, she will be executed for treason against the crown. Isolde's smile was triumphant. You heard your king. Remove her. The guards seized Seraphine's arms, beginning to drag her from the hall. She did not struggle this time. What was the point? But as she passed Kaelin, something made her stop, made her look up into those silver eyes one last time. I hope your kingdom was worth it, she whispered. I hope it keeps you warm at night when you remember what you threw away. Something flickered in his gaze. Regret? Pain? She would never know. The doors slammed shut behind her, and Seraphine was alone in the darkness. She did not know, could not know, that she carried his child inside her. She would not discover the truth for another 3 weeks, by which time she had already disappeared into the Eastern Territories, determined to build a new life far from the man who had broken her. But fate, as she would learn, was not finished with them yet. 3 years changed a person. Seraphine had learned to survive in the Eastern Territories, far from the Northern Realm's reach. She found work as a seamstress in the village of Brindlemark, a quiet settlement where people asked few questions. But the greatest change walked beside her now, his small hand clasped in hers. Caspian had his father's silver eyes. It was the first thing Seraphine noticed when the midwife placed him in her arms, screaming and perfect and utterly devastating. Those eyes, that unmistakable shade of mercury and moonlight, staring up at her with newborn wonder. She had wept for 3 days straight. Now, at nearly 3 years old, Caspian was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity. He had inherited his father's dark hair, along with those telling eyes, but his smile was entirely his mother's. Mama, look! He tugged at her hand, pointing toward a merchant's stall displaying carved wooden animals. A wolf! Can I have the wolf? Seraphine's heart clenched. Of course he wanted the wolf. His blood called to it, even if he did not understand why. Perhaps for your name day, she said gently, steering him past the stall. We need to buy flour today, remember? You promised to help me make honey cakes. Caspian's disappointment lasted approximately 3 seconds before he spotted a butterfly and went chasing after it, his laughter ringing through the market square. Seraphine watched him with fierce, protective love. Everything she had endured had been worth it for him. The bond still ached. She had hoped it would fade, that rejected bonds eventually withered. But 3 years later, she still felt the hollow place where Kaelin should have been, still dreamed of silver eyes, still woke some nights with tears on her cheeks. Sarah. The shout made her spin around, hand instinctively reaching for Caspian. But it was only Dagny, the elderly beta woman who ran the boarding house where they lived, hurrying toward her with panic in her eyes. Dagny, what is wrong? Soldiers. The old woman was gasping for breath. Northern soldiers, asking questions in the tavern. About an Omega with a young child. About silver eyes. Seraphine's stomach dropped. They found me, she whispered. After all this time, they found me. You need to run. Dagny pressed a small purse into her hands. There is a merchant caravan leaving for the southern ports within the hour. I have already spoken to the driver. He will hide you among his wares. Dagny, I cannot take your money. You can, and you will. The old woman's eyes glistened. That boy is special, Sarah. Anyone with sense can see it. Whatever you are running from, it must not catch you. Seraphine embraced her fiercely, gratitude choking her throat. Then she scooped Caspian into her arms and ran. They almost made it. The caravan was in sight, the driver already waving them forward, when a wall of soldiers materialized from the alley ahead. Seraphine skidded to a halt, spinning to find another squad blocking her retreat. Trapped. Seraphine Ashwood. A commander stepped forward, his expression coldly satisfied. By order of His Majesty King Kaelin, you are to return to Valdris Castle immediately. No. She clutched Caspian tighter, her wolf rising with maternal fury. I was banished. Returning means execution. You cannot. The king has rescinded your banishment. The commander's eyes dropped to Caspian, and hunger flickered there. It seems His Majesty has had a change of heart. Mama? Caspian's voice trembled. Who are these men? It is all right, my love. Seraphine pressed a kiss to his dark hair, her mind racing desperately. Everything is going to be all right. But as the soldiers closed in around them, as iron shackles were clasped around her wrists, Seraphine knew she was lying. Kaelin had found them, and she had no idea what fresh cruelty awaited. The journey to Valdris took 4 days by carriage. 4 days of uncertainty, of fear, of trying to keep Caspian calm while her own heart shattered. The soldiers treated them well enough but would not answer questions. Caspian, remarkably, seemed to view the whole thing as an adventure. Are we going to see a real castle, Mama? His pale eyes sparkled with excitement. With towers and knights and everything? Yes, darling. Seraphine stroked his hair, fighting to keep her voice steady. A very big castle. Why do the soldiers keep looking at me funny? Because you look exactly like their king, Seraphine thought. Because those eyes mark you as royal blood, and everyone can see it. They are probably just curious about such a handsome young man, she said instead. When Valdris Castle rose before them, Seraphine felt her carefully constructed walls crumble. Nothing had changed. The black stone still gleamed, the towers still pierced the sky, and somewhere within, the man who had shattered her waited. The throne room confrontation passed in a blur. Kaelin's demand for his heir, her defiant refusal, the court's shocked silence. And then he had done the unthinkable. The Alpha King dropped to his knees before a rejected Omega. Now, hours later, Seraphine sat in a chamber that was disturbingly familiar. The same east tower, the same silk sheets, the same copper bathing tub, the same gilded cage. Caspian slept fitfully on the massive bed, exhausted by the day's upheaval. Seraphine watched him breathe, her heart aching with love and fear in equal measure. A soft knock interrupted her vigil. She did not need to ask who it was. The bond told her, singing with recognition despite everything. Enter, she said flatly. Kaelin stepped into the chamber, and 3 years collapsed into nothing. He looked older, she noticed. There were lines around his silver eyes that had not been there before, a weariness in his bearing that spoke of sleepless nights and heavy burdens. Good, she thought viciously. Let him suffer. But another part of her, the part that still remembered his touch, wanted to smooth those lines away. Seraphine. His voice was rough. We need to talk. Do we? She rose from her chair, positioning herself between him and the bed where Caspian slept. It seems to me you said everything that needed saying 3 years ago. Pain flashed across his features. I was wrong. What I did to you was unforgivable. She cut him off coldly. So let us not waste time on apologies neither of us believes. Tell me what you want, and then leave us alone. Kaelin's gaze drifted to the sleeping child, and his expression crumbled. He looks just like me. The words were barely a whisper. I knew from the reports, but seeing him, his name is Caspian. Seraphine's voice hardened. He is my son. Mine. You have no claim to him. He is my heir. He is a child who has never known his father, who has asked me 1,000 times why other children have papas and he does not, who cries sometimes at night for reasons he cannot explain because the bond he should have with you is nothing but an aching void. Kaelin flinched as if struck. I did not know. His voice cracked. Seraphine, I swear to you, I did not know you were carrying my child when you humiliated me before your entire court, when you rejected our bond and banished me on pain of death. Seraphine laughed bitterly. Would it have changed anything if you had known? The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Yes, Kaylin finally said. It would have changed everything. Seraphine wanted to believe him. That was the most infuriating part. Despite everything he had done, despite 3 years of pain and struggle, some treacherous part of her heart still yearned for his words to be true. But she had learned hard lessons about trusting Kaylin Voss. Pretty words, she said coldly. But I notice you married Isolde anyway. Tell me, Your Majesty, where is your beloved queen tonight? Does she know you are here? Visiting the Omega you once called worthless? Kaylin's expression shuddered. Isolde is dead. The words hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Dead? Seraphine repeated. How? Poison. His voice was flat, emotionless. 18 months ago. Someone slipped wolfsbane into her wine. The healers could not save her. Seraphine should have felt something. Satisfaction, perhaps, or vindication. Instead, she felt only hollow surprise. Did you love her? No. The admission came without hesitation. I tried. For the sake of the alliance, for the kingdom, I tried to feel something beyond obligation. But every time I looked at her, I saw only the woman who had stolen my true mate's place. I was not stolen from you. Seraphine's voice sharpened. You gave me away. There is a difference. I know. Kaylin moved toward the window, his back to her. I have relived that night 1,000 times. Wondered what would have happened if I had been stronger. If I had chosen you instead of duty. We will never know, will we? He turned to face her, and the raw anguish in his eyes made her breath catch. I am not asking for forgiveness, Seraphine. I know I do not deserve it, but I am asking for a chance. He took a step toward her. A chance to know my son. A chance to prove that I am not the man who hurt you. And if I refuse? The question seemed to pain him. Then I will have the guards escort you back to Brindlemark tomorrow. You have my word. Seraphine stared at him, searching for deception. 3 years ago, she would have believed anything he told her. Now she knew better. But Caspian deserved to know his father. Did she have the right to deny him that? 1 week, she heard herself say. You have 1 week to prove yourself. But if you hurt him, if you break his heart the way you broke mine, I will take him so far that your soldiers will never find us again. Kaylin nodded slowly. 1 week. He left without another word, and Seraphine sank into her chair, trembling with emotions she could not name. The days that followed were torture of a different kind. She watched Kaylin with Caspian, waiting for him to fail. Instead, she witnessed something terrifying. She watched him become a father. Kaylin was awkward at first, but Caspian bridged the gap within hours. You are very tall, Caspian informed him solemnly on the second day. Are you a giant? Kaylin's lips twitched. Not quite. Though my father was even taller. I want to be tall like you when I grow up. Something vulnerable flickered in Kaylin's mercury gaze. You will be, I promise. By the 4th day, Caspian was calling him Papa. Seraphine told herself the tears were from exhaustion, but the nights truly undid her. The dreams returned with a vengeance. Vivid dreams of Kaylin coming to her chamber, his hands on her skin, his voice calling her his mate. She would wake, gasping, her body burning, the bond screaming for completion. During the day, she kept careful distance, but she could not escape the awareness that hummed whenever he was near, could not ignore how his scent made her wolf keen with recognition. On the 5th night, she found him waiting outside her chamber. Seraphine, his voice was strained. We need to speak. It is late, Your Majesty. Whatever it is, can wait until morning. No. He blocked her path, and the heat radiating from his body made her dizzy. It cannot. The bond. He broke off, jaw clenching. You feel it too. Do not deny it. What I feel is irrelevant. Is it? He stepped closer, and she forgot how to breathe. Because I am going mad. Every moment near you is agony. The bond demands completion. Then stop fighting. The words escaped before she could stop them. Kaylin went very still. What are you saying? What was she saying? 3 years of anger, of pain, of lonely nights, and now he was here, offering himself. I am saying, Seraphine whispered, that I am tired of fighting too. He kissed her like a drowning man finding air. The kiss ignited something that had been smoldering for 3 years. Seraphine gasped against Kaylin's mouth as he lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her into the chamber. Somewhere distant, a voice that sounded like reason screamed that this was a mistake. She silenced it without mercy. His hands were everywhere, relearning curves he had memorized long ago. Her fingers tangled in his dark hair, demanding more. The bond blazed like wildfire. Tell me to stop, Kaylin groaned. If you do not want this, tell me now. Do not stop. She arched into him. He claimed her then, and Seraphine shattered. She woke to gray dawn light, and Kaelin's body curved around hers. For a moment, she catalogued sensations. The pleasant ache, the weight of his arm, his steady breathing, then memory crashed over her. What had she done? I can hear you thinking. Kaelin's voice was rough with sleep. His arm tightened around her. Do not run, please. I should never have. Seraphine, he shifted, propping himself up to look at her. In the morning light, his silver eyes held no coldness, only warmth. Last night was not a mistake. Do not make it into one. You rejected me. Her voice cracked. You chose her over me, and I have paid for that choice every day since. He cupped her face in his hands. Isolde never let me forget what I had given up. She knew I dreamed of you, knew I whispered your name in my sleep. It was poison between us long before the actual poison took her. Seraphine wanted to pull away, wanted to protect herself from the hope blooming treacherously in her chest. Why did you really summon me back? She asked. The truth this time. Kaelin was silent for a long moment. Because I am dying, he finally said. The words knocked the breath from her. What? The poison that killed Isolde did not come from outside. Someone has been slowly poisoning me for months. The healers give me a year at most. No, she sat up abruptly. That is impossible. The poison works slowly. Attacks the bond first, then the wolf, then the body. He caught her hand. I summoned you because I needed to see my son before I die. Tears burned Seraphine's eyes. Who is doing this? I do not know. We suspect southern assassins, remnants of Isolde's family, but we have found nothing. There must be something. Some cure. My healers have tried everything. His thumb traced circles on her palm. There is no cure, but I could not die without seeing you again, without telling you how wrong I was. She was crying now. You cannot die. Caspian just found you. Found me again? His smile was sad. The cruelest irony of all. Seraphine's mind raced. There had to be something. Then a thought struck her. The old magic, she breathed. What? My grandmother told stories about the ancient wolves. They had healing powers that could cure any ailment. Those are myths. Are they? She gripped his hands. We live as wolves. We shift forms. Is it impossible that other magic exists? Even if it did, such knowledge was lost centuries ago. Then we find it. There are libraries in the Eastern Territories. Ancient texts. If any record exists, it would be there. Seraphine, you gave up on me once. She met his eyes fiercely. Do not ask me to give up on you. For a long moment, he stared at her. Then he pressed his forehead to hers. What did I ever do to deserve you? Nothing yet, but you have time to earn it. She did not know how wrong she was. That evening, as she prepared to discuss their search with Kaelin, a servant arrived with an urgent summons. The king requests your presence in the council chamber immediately, my lady. The servant's face was pale. There has been an attack. Seraphine's blood went cold. What kind of attack? On the young prince, my lady. The servant's voice trembled. Someone tried to kill your son. Seraphine ran. The castle corridors blurred past her as she sprinted toward the council chamber, her heart pounding so violently she thought it might shatter her ribs. Not Caspian. Please, not Caspian. She burst through the doors to find chaos. Guards surrounded a small figure on the floor. Healers shouted orders. And in the center of it all, Kaelin knelt beside their son, his face a mask of barely controlled terror. Caspian! Seraphine shoved through the crowd, dropping to her knees beside him. Baby, can you hear me? His silver eyes fluttered open, glazed with pain but alive. Alive. Thank the gods, he was alive. Mama. His voice was weak. The nice lady gave me a sweet, but it tasted wrong. What lady? Kaelin demanded, his voice deadly quiet. What did she look like? Pretty. Gold hair. Caspian's eyes drooped. She said she was my aunt. Seraphine and Kaelin exchanged horrified glances. Gold hair. Isolde's family. The healers need space to work, someone announced, and suddenly hands were pulling Seraphine away from her son. No. She fought against them. I will not leave him. Seraphine. Kaelin caught her shoulders. Let them help him. Please. She sagged against him, watching helplessly as the healers carried Caspian away. I will find who did this. Kaelin's voice was ice and fire, and I will tear them apart with my bare hands. It was the Ravencrofts. Seraphine's voice shook with fury. Isolde's family. They poisoned her to frame you, and now they are trying to kill our son. We do not know that for certain. Gold hair, Kaelin. She said she was his aunt. Seraphine pulled back to meet his eyes. The Ravencrofts have wanted the throne for generations. Isolde was supposed to give them an heir they could control. When she failed, when you rejected the bond with her, they eliminated her and began poisoning you instead. Understanding dawned in Kaelin's expression. And now that Caspian exists, a true heir with royal blood, he is the only thing standing between them and the crown. Kaelin's eyes blazed with lethal intent. "Captain," a guard snapped to attention. "Seal the castle. No one enters or leaves. Find every member of the Ravencroft household and bring them to the dungeons." "Yes, Your Majesty." As soldiers scattered to obey, Kaelin turned back to Seraphine. "Stay with Caspian. Do not leave his side for any reason." "Where are you going?" "To end this." He pressed a fierce kiss to her forehead. "I should have protected you 3 years ago. I failed. I will not fail our son." He was gone before she could respond. The hours that followed were the longest of Seraphine's life. She sat beside Caspian's bed, watching the rise and fall of his small chest, counting every breath. The healers had purged most of the poison, but some had entered his blood. They could not say whether he would recover. The poison was the same one killing Kaelin, and there was no cure. As night fell, desperation drove her to a decision. She could not lose them both, would not lose them both. If there was even the smallest chance that the old magic existed, she had to find it. Seraphine pressed a kiss to Caspian's fevered brow. "I will be back, my love. I promise." She found the castle library abandoned at this hour, its towering shelves casting long shadows in the candlelight. Hours passed as she searched, her eyes burning from reading faded manuscripts, her fingers black with dust from volumes unopened for centuries. It was nearly dawn when she found it, a crumbling tome, hidden behind newer texts, its leather cover embossed with symbols she did not recognize. The Rite of Bonded Souls. According to the text, fated mates shared more than emotional connection. Their life forces were intertwined. When one mate fell ill, the other could offer their own essence to heal them through complete bonding. But the cost was severe. The mate who gave would be forever diminished. Their wolf weakened, their lifespan shortened. In some cases, the ritual killed them outright. Seraphine stared at the words until they blurred. She could save them. Both of them. Kaelin and Caspian shared royal blood, and she was bonded to Kaelin. If the text was correct, her essence could heal them both, even if it destroyed her in the process. The choice should have been difficult. It was not. Seraphine had lived 3 years without Kaelin, 3 years of hollow aching. She would not survive losing him again. And Caspian, her heart, her reason for existing, she would burn the world to ashes before she let him die. She memorized the ritual requirements and returned to the healing ward just as the first light of dawn touched the windows. Caspian's condition had worsened. His breathing was shallow now, his small body burning with fever. The healers hovered nearby, their expressions grim. "Where is the king?" Seraphine demanded. "Still in the dungeons, my lady. The interrogations continue." Seraphine sent a servant to fetch him, then settled beside Caspian's bed to wait. When Kaelin arrived, he looked like a man aged 10 years in a single night. His clothes were disheveled, his silver eyes hollow. "The Ravencrofts confessed." His voice was hoarse. "Everything you suspected was true. They killed Isolde. They have been poisoning me for months. And last night," he broke off, his gaze falling on Caspian's still form. "I found something." Seraphine rose, pulling him to a quiet corner. "In the old texts, a ritual that could save them both." Hope flickered in his eyes. "What kind of ritual?" Seraphine explained, watching his expression shift from hope to horror as he understood the implications. "No." The word was absolute. "Absolutely not." "Kaelin, you could die, Seraphine. The text said the strain could kill you, and if I do nothing, you both die anyway." She caught his face in her hands. "I cannot lose you again. I cannot lose our son. If there is any chance at all, I have to take it. I will not allow you to sacrifice yourself for me. It is not your choice." Seraphine's voice hardened. "I am his mother. I am your mate. This is my right." "And what about Caspian?" Kaelin's voice cracked. "What about our son growing up without his mother?" "He will have his father." Tears streamed down her face. "He will have you, Kaelin, whole and healthy and alive. That is more than he has ever had." "Seraphine, please. I love you." The words tumbled out, raw and desperate. "I have loved you since the moment our eyes met in that village square. I loved you through the rejection, through the banishment, through 3 years of raising our son alone, and I will love you with my last breath if that is what it takes to save you." Kaelin pulled her into his arms, his body shaking with silent sobs. "I cannot lose you. he whispered against her hair. Not again. Not ever again. Then do not. Seraphine pulled back to meet his eyes. Help me complete the bond. Let me save our family. For a long moment he simply stared at her, those pale eyes swimming with anguish and love and terrible understanding. Then, slowly, he nodded. The ritual required moonlight. They gathered in the castle courtyard as night fell, Caspian's small body laid on an altar of ancient stone. Kaelin stood at his side, his hand clasped in Seraphine's. Seraphine had memorized the words. As she looked at her son's pale face, at her mate's anguished eyes, doubt crept in. What if it did not work? Then at least we will be together, she told herself. Begin, she whispered. The ancient words fell from her lips like drops of liquid silver. As she spoke, she felt something stir deep within her chest, a power she had never known she possessed. Her wolf rose to the surface, not fighting for control, but lending its strength to hers. The bond between her and Kaelin blazed to life, brighter than it had ever burned before. She felt him. Not just his presence, but his essence, his fears, his regrets, his love for her and Caspian. She felt the poison in his veins like black ice, echoed in Caspian's small body, and she reached for it. The pain was beyond anything she had ever experienced. It felt like her soul was being torn from her body, stretched thin across the bond to wrap around those she loved. She heard Kaelin cry out, felt his hands tighten on hers, but she did not stop, could not stop. She poured herself into them, her strength, her essence, her very life force flowing through the bond like healing light. She felt the poison recoil, felt it burning away beneath the onslaught of her love. The world went white. Seraphine opened her eyes to sunlight. For a moment, she simply lay there, confused. She was in a bed, soft and warm, with familiar silk sheets beneath her fingertips. The East Tower chamber. But how? Mama. A small body launched itself onto the bed, and suddenly Caspian was in her arms, healthy and whole and radiating joy. You woke up. He was crying and laughing at the same time. Papa said you would wake up, but it has been so many days and I was scared. How many days? Seraphine managed, her voice rusty with disuse. 3 days, my heart. Kaelin stood in the doorway, and the sight of him stole her breath. The hollow exhaustion was gone from his features. His eyes sparkled with life and health. The poison's shadow had vanished completely. It worked, she whispered. It worked. He crossed to the bed, gathering her in his arms. You saved us both. You brilliant, stubborn woman. I thought I would die. So did us. For 3 days you did not wake. The healers said your essence was so depleted they did not know if you would survive. Seraphine reached up to touch his face, reassuring herself he was real. The bond feels different, she breathed. Complete. Kaelin pressed his forehead to hers. For the first time since I rejected you, it is whole. I can feel you, Seraphine. Every breath, every heartbeat. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you. And I love you. He kissed her softly. More than my crown, more than my kingdom, more than my own life. I love you, and I will spend every day proving it until you believe me. Papa. Caspian tugged at his sleeve impatiently. Can we tell her the other thing now? Seraphine looked between them. What other thing? Kaelin smiled, and it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. While you slept, I made some decisions. He withdrew a ring from his pocket, a band of silver set with a stone that matched his eyes. The court has been informed that their king will be taking a new queen, his true mate. Seraphine stared at the ring, then at him, her heart pounding. Kaelin, I failed you once. His voice was fierce. I chose duty over fate and nearly lost everything. I will not make that mistake again. Seraphine Ashwood, will you marry me? Will you be my queen, my partner, my mate in truth? Caspian bounced impatiently. Say yes, Mama. Through her tears, through the overwhelming joy that threatened to consume her, Seraphine found her voice. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. Kaelin slid the ring onto her finger, and when he kissed her, Seraphine felt the bond between them sing with complete, perfect harmony. 3 years ago, she had been a rejected Omega with nothing but her broken heart. Now she was a queen, a mother, a mate. She was finally home. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. A big thank you to everyone who is following. Your support truly means the world to me.